Hello everybody. Thank you for being here. Happy Tuesday. Here we are as always at 8:30 p.m. Hey Robert. I'm glad you made it here this week too. I always appreciate people that show up in any capacity. So whether that's every week, whether that's when you're able to, whether that's joining live, whether that's catching the replay, whether it's sharing something with somebody else, any capacity, I greatly appreciate. And this week, this Tuesday, is our last meditation before the solar eclipse that we have coming up on Monday. So when we come back to meet next Tuesday, it will be the day afterwards. And yeah, so that is part of what we have here. Let me just bring up my notes. How about we bring up the intention first? I haven't done that yet. If you haven't seen the intention, here it is on the screen. I create space for inspiration to reshape. I create space for inspiration to reshape. There's lots of parts to this intention. There's the I create, there's space, there's inspiration, and there's reshaping or reforming. Intention's always released on Sunday, so that way you can sit with it for a little while by yourself if you would like to. I think it's good if you give yourself that time to just see what comes up, even if you don't really know what you're looking for. Sometimes those are the best prompts, or when you're just kind of open to whatever you could possibly receive. Any little thoughts that pop into your head, feelings, emotions, any of that is all valid. And I say as often as I can that you can come here and you can listen to me every Tuesday, which I hope you enjoy and I hope you get a lot of good stuff out of. But there is something that you can tell yourself, your brain, your soul, your secret heart of hearts, whatever it is that you call that deep part of you, where that intuition comes from within your soul somewhere. That is something that you cannot get from me. That is something that you can only get from yourself. So sitting with the intent is why I encourage you to sit with that intention as much as you can, or even just not as much as you can. Like, you don't have to spend a long period of time, but that's why I encourage you to take that opportunity that you have to sit with it for a moment, even if it's just for a couple minutes before we start our meditation here. Hey Nikita, it's good to see you here as always. Appreciate you. So yeah, that's why I like to release it on Sunday, and then we come here and talk about it together. Of course, always looking at the energy above us, looking at the astrology. So we're looking at the placements of the planets, we're looking at the transits and the aspects, so how they may or may not be interacting with each other. You can tell a lot just by the sign that a planet is in, because it is that planet that has its own like personality, its own wants and desires, and its own flavor. It then gets put into a sign that often is not its own flavor, unless it's in its home sign. So there are these different ways that it all interacts. So we look at that, and then an intention comes together from thinking about all of these different pieces together. And I like the way that it just kind of forms itself or comes together, or whatever it may be. Looking in the comments again. Hey Melissa, good to see you here too. I appreciate those of you that, like I said, keep coming back as often as you are able to. Super appreciate it. So this week, I create space for inspiration to reshape. I create space for inspiration to reshape. So Mercury is stationing for retrograde. My software says that like overnight tonight is when Mercury will officially be retrograde. So we have these couple days between Mercury being direct and Mercury being retrograde. We have what is called the stationing period. So this is the period where the planet appears to, we know that the planet doesn't actually stop moving and switch direction, but from our perspective, it appears that the planet slows down, comes to a halt, and starts to move backwards in degrees, okay? So this period where the planet is slowing down and coming to its halt and changing directions, that's the stationing period. And that's a very, very strong period. We're just at the tail end of that. But that is a very, I don't necessarily want to say empowered. It can often be empowered, but it's a very strong influence for that planet. So however it's showing up for you, whether it's more on the positive end or more on the challenging end, that planet shows up very strongly. So Mercury, the planet of communications, the planet of our mind, the planet of our thoughts and our perceptions. Communication that comes along with technology and things like that. So all of those type of subjects are fair game within the early part of this week. So like today, yesterday, the day before, even tomorrow, all kind of like fair game as far as like a strong influence. Again, not necessarily connotating whether that's positive or negative, just a strong play and a strong influence. So that's where we're at right now. By the middle of this week, so by tomorrow, by the time most of us wake up, if you're in somewhere around my neck of the woods, Mercury will be fully retrograde. So we have Mercury retrograde this week. We have Venus conjoining Neptune, which we're in right now, and then Venus shortly after that moves into the sign of Aries. And then we have the solar eclipse on Monday. So those are the main aspects that we're looking at. There's a couple applying aspects that we'll talk about with the solar eclipse, but these are the aspects that we have like fully in play right now. So Mercury retrograde. Anytime you have a planet that goes retrograde, you have this reworking or this reshaping or this reconsideration of that planet. So you have this reconfiguration of, or this reworking somehow of Mercury. So of our mind, thoughts, communication, perception. Along with communication comes technology, because that's one of our communication tools. So you have this reworking or this revisiting of these themes here with Mercury retrograde. We're going to have this through most of April until April 25th or 26th, depending on where you're located. But there's this revisiting or this rethinking of our mind. And, you know, the intention, I create space for inspiration to reshape. A big focus on that word inspiration this week here, okay? So, inspiration can come from many different areas, right? We get, you know, creative inspirations. We could have spiritual inspirations. We could have physical, mundane inspirations of like out of necessity or out of wants or out of needs. Inspiration can come from within us. It can come from other people. There's lots of different places inspiration can come from. But when you are inspired, or there's some sort of inspiration of some kind, there is some sort of stimulation of the mind. So I looked up the definition for inspiration, and it's the process of being mentally stimulated to do or feel something, especially to do something creative. So looking just at that first part, the process of being mentally stimulated to do or feel something. Mentally stimulated. So when we are inspired by something, wherever that inspiration comes from, wherever that spark comes from, it does something within our mind, within our brain, within our thoughts, within our mercurial body that that changes our mindset, or changes the way that we process things within our head, or changes maybe the amount of mental energy, which leads to the amount of physical energy that we're putting into something. So there's this reworking of Mercury right now. So with Mercury starting to move backwards and moving back over the degrees of Aries that it's already been, you have this possible reshaping of inspiration, just with Mercury being retrograde alone. I create space. Mercury's retrograde in the sign of Aries, the sign of I. So I made a post on both of the social media pages about the like I am thoughts and the I am consciousness. The focusing on, you know, your own space and often your own physical energy. Sometimes it can be ego-driven, sometimes not. But we have Mercury moving backwards, reshaping and revisiting our mind within this place of I. So I create inspiration. Aries is very independent, very much a sign of initiation, a sign of going out on its own, maybe before thinking things through and just like taking that action to move forward. So it feels like Mercury being retrograde in this place has this intense reshaping of like the I am mind. And when you have that reshaping of the I am mind of any kind, you know, if we think of it in a like a positive form, there's going to be some sort of inspiration. So whenever you're contemplating something like deeply about yourself, or something from like within your being, it seems to me that there is some sort of inspiration to do or to not do something. Does that make sense? Hopefully that makes sense. So Mercury moving backwards, you know, in the reshaping aspect of our intention here too. So Mercury is the shapeshifter of the planets. Mercury is the one that can move between boundaries, between gateways. Mercury is the guider of souls that brings souls from the earthly realm into the underworld for that moment of judgment after death. And you have this fluidity with Mercury. Think about Gemini. Think about how Gemini can switch from one thing to another. So you have this fluidity within Mercury itself, being the shapeshifter. You know, Mercury as a planet does not have a gender assigned to it. Does not have a masculine or feminine gender assigned to it. Its gender quality is based off of its position with the sign. So it's based off of the space that is created around it, the space that it's in. So Mercury already gives us this ability to change things, to change our mind, to reshape things. And then when it's retrograde, it's moving backwards and it's reconsidering things. So as Mercury is moving backwards in Aries, it's reconsidering those Aries qualities, so that initiation and that I am type quality there that we have. So Mercury retrograde moving into this week, reshaping our mind and our thoughts, and therefore our inspirations. And then today, actually, like right now, if you're joining live, Venus conjoining Neptune at 27 degrees of Pisces. So we've talked a lot about Venus moving through the sign of Pisces, through its exaltation, how Venus does really, really well there. It's been in mutual reception with Jupiter, which we've talked about how they are like helping each other out, like lending a hand or giving a call, like, hey, don't forget about this little tidbit, this tool. That type of thing. So now at 27 degrees, just as Venus is getting ready to leave her sign of exaltation, she comes into a conjunction with Neptune, which Neptune, by the way, in modern astrology, not necessarily that I assign the rulership, I've said that before, in modern astrology, Neptune is ruled by the sign of Pisces. So you have the modern ruler, Neptune in Pisces, and then Venus, which is exalted in Pisces, coming together in the sign of Pisces. Very, very creative or spiritual type inspiration. So these two planets coming together in the sign of Pisces specifically is very, very creative, very like romantically creative, so very like ideal, like idealizing type situation. Pisces does not necessarily have very clear boundaries. We've talked before about like this like energetic soup. It's the last sign of the zodiac, so it's where all of these things come together, all of these thoughts, feelings, emotions, all of the events and everything that like have happened. It's this big huge culmination, and it's everything coming together in a place of water, in a place of emotion. So you have Neptune, the planet that also dissolves boundaries. We've talked about how it kind of just like has things fade away into the mist. I've talked about that quite a bit recently. So Neptune is a planet that fully immerses us in one thing, but in order to do that, it has to dissolve something else away. So in a spiritual aspect, Neptune dissolves away the material world and just fully envelops us in that spiritual realm or that spiritual connection, whatever that means to you. On a more less positive side, you can have this can be like overindulgence or leading to tipping into addiction. So whatever it is that we're trying to escape is what's being dissolved, and that like mode of escapism is what we are fully immersing ourselves in while we're dissolving away whatever it is that perhaps we're trying to get away from. It's fully immersing yourself into something, but in order to do that, you have to move away from something else. So with Venus there, it feels like we're fully immersing ourselves in these Venusian aspects. So love, art, beauty, harmony, sisterhood, women, children, all of these type of themes that are Venusian type things, money, aesthetics, often the physical things that bring us joy or bring us some sort of balance or harmony, even if it's a superficial one. All of those things, there's this coming together with Neptune that like fully immerses us into that. It feels like there has to be some sort of inspiration that comes out of that, some sort of inspiration to create a Venusian, Neptunian, almost like idealistic, romantic type situation. So the inspiration to create that, the inspiration to create this spiritual connection, this inspiration to create some sort of artistic form or expression, or to maybe share some sort of emotional connection that we have to something that we feel like so deeply. That these two planets coming together, inspiration of some sort of some kind of beauty. That's the word that keeps coming back to me, is like emotional beauty, or emotionally satisfying type thing, like something that we are deeply connected to. So creating space for this inspiration to come together. And the reshaping portion of it, shortly after Venus has the conjunction with Neptune, so Tuesday, which is today if you're with us live, is the Venus-Neptune conjunction. By Friday, Venus is going to be in the sign of Aries. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Venus moves into the sign of Aries. So this this Venusian characteristic is going to reshape fairly quickly. It's in this very dreamlike, very like transcendental state with Neptune in the sign of Pisces, and that emotional sign, feeling very uplifted, very fulfilled, very inspired. So very like emotionally charged to move forward with something. And then she moves into the sign of Aries. Then she moves into a fire sign that is ruled by Mars, rather than the water sign that's moved by Jupiter. So we're moving into the sign of Aries now. So now that inspiration that has filled us, this like emotionally charged, that doesn't, this like emotionally connected or like emotionally in tune inspiration that we have now moving into the sign of Aries is going to have some sort of like way of taking that inspiration, or could potentially have some way of taking that inspiration and like inspiring us to move forward with it. So we've now been in the sign of Pisces, where we connect with it, where we come up and create the inspiration with Neptune there, this like beautiful, artistic, in tune connection of some kind, being kind of broad because it can play out many, many different ways here. And then we're going to move into the sign of Aries. So then she takes that inspiration, and then Venus goes forward into the sign of the warrior, the sign of Mars, the fire sign, and then she's going to want to move. So Venus is still Venus. Venus still wants cohesion. Venus still wants to bring balance and still wants to bring harmony and still wants to fulfill that inspiration. But has to do so in an Aries type way, in a Mars type way. So there has to be movement. So it feels like there is some sort of inspiration in the early part of this week, and then by the end of the week, there is some sort of movement. There's some sort of reshaping of the inspiration here. So we have the... All right, I'm stopping real quick to look at the comments because I see we have a couple. How long is Venus in Aries? I'll have to double check on that one. It's about 6 to 8 weeks. Robert, when does it go into... Oh, when does Mars go into the sign of Aries? Mars moves into Aries in a few weeks. Venus moves into Aries on Friday. I have a list of dates, but I don't have them directly in front of me right now. I can start printing them in front of me so that way I have them with me. So Venus moving into the sign of Aries after being emotionally charged right before the eclipse, by the way. So it's Friday. The eclipse is on Monday. Venus takes this just flat out good feeling that she's had in the sign of Pisces and moves forward with it in an Aries type's way. Reshapes it in a I am type way. So I create space for inspiration to reshape. That first part, that emotional, that like, sorry, not emotionally, that like empowering portion, so that I create space. Very Aries-like there, okay? Very North Node eclipse in Aries-like. So she's going forward in this like fiery way. So she has this inspiration, this feel-good feeling, and she's, maybe she's built up a lot of backing behind her somehow, whether that's confidence, whether that's inspiration, whether that's attunement and connection to that we've pulled out of the sign of Pisces. It feels like she's ready to go forward in the sign of Aries, in the sign of the warrior, and make some sort of moves here. So that Venus conjoining Neptune today, tomorrow too, great for meditation, great for connecting to source, however it is that you connect. So musicians connect to source through playing music. Artists, they connect through what they create. Parents, they connect through source, possibly through their children. Many people connect to source through different scriptures and different ancient texts. Whatever it is that connects you to source. Some people, it's sitting outside out in nature, just out by the grass or out by water or something like that. Doing that is absolutely wonderful right now. And then we have the solar eclipse on Monday. So 2:20 p.m. Eastern, that time is very specific to Holland, Michigan, where I am. You'll have to calculate your own time. It could be, if you're looking to see the eclipse, you're going to want to have the exact time for the place you are, because even changing by the minutes is different. So just make sure you know when it is in your area if you're trying to visibly see it. I'm traveling to Path of Totality, going to meet up with some people, and I'm really, really excited for that because I have not seen a full total eclipse, solar eclipse. The one in 2017, I think, was 70 to 80% totality where I am, so I saw that one, like from my backyard. Traveling for this one, super excited for it. Anyways, 2:20 p.m. Eastern Time, 19 degrees 24 minutes of Aries. So you can take a peek around your chart and see where you see things around 19 degrees, give or take maybe 3 degrees on each side, and kind of contemplate that a little bit in your own chart. Solar eclipses, new moons. We have talked a lot about the difference between solar and lunar eclipses within the last couple weeks. Solar eclipses, we know, are new moons, so they're new beginnings, but they're new beginnings on high. It's an amped up new beginning here. In the sign of Aries, so in the sign of initiation, in the sign of starting, in the sign of going out your own way, in that sign of I am, in that sign of creating without necessarily thinking about the next step that comes after. It's just kind of going. Have some cool significations within, some interesting significations within the solar eclipse. So we have all of this energy that we're talking about that's building up this week, moving us towards the eclipse, bringing in this inspiration. And then we have this new beginning that starts in the sign of Aries, where we have Saturn and Mars sitting 1 degree apart from each other. We'll be talking about that again next week too. Saturn and Mars sitting practically in a conjunction in the sign of Pisces. Mars is the ruler of the eclipse because the eclipse is in Mars's sign, which is the sign of Aries. Sun and the moon both coming together in Mars's sign, in the sign of Aries. So this Saturn-Mars conjunction is really, really important for the eclipse. So there is this focus, there is this seriousness that comes with this eclipse. There is some sort of feeling of like disciplined action. So it's could be serious, could be contemplate, could be not contemplative, like very calculated and very laid out, very much like following a specific framework, new beginning. So it tells me or makes me feel like the initiation and the new beginning that is coming from this eclipse is going to take some focus. It's going to take some determination, and it might take a little bit of work too. It might take a little bit of saying no, or a little bit of like, hold on, let's get all of our ducks in a row. There's a little bit of a, there is this like, this opposite factor within Mars and Saturn. So Mars wants to go. Mars wants to move and wants to make things happen, right? Saturn slows you down and says, hold on, let's make sure we have all of our ducks in a row. Let's make sure the framework is laid out, where Mars just kind of wants to go first. So you have this Mars that wants to move forward, but then you have Saturn that might kind of be like, oh, hold on, we got to make sure we have everything right. So, you know, it can be a little, it feels like it could be a little bit of like a little bit of an angsty Mars. It feels like it could be a little bit of like a, like a little maybe like frustrated, like we should be a little bit further along than what we are type of thing. But I guess the point is that we're moving along, right? So you have these two planets of very clear boundaries. Mars is not afraid to say what it wants to say, do what it wants to do. It's not afraid to lay down the boundaries that it wants to. Saturn is boundaries. So you have these clear boundaries in Pisces, in a place that is not very good at having boundaries. So there's this like conundrum within this a little bit here of wanting to go forward, wanting to pull back, wanting to go forward, wanting to go back. And then we have Chiron sitting with the sun and the moon, like exact to the degree and to the minute at the time of the eclipse. Chiron I don't talk about a whole lot, but it's really important. It's important that we talk about it since there is this exact conjunction with the eclipse. So there's this back and forth, maybe pull a little bit here, right? This like reshaping of the inspiration where like we want to pull forward, we want to pull back, we want to pull forward, we want to pull back. Part of that like back and forth motion I feel like is also indicated by Chiron sitting with the sun and the moon, because what that does is it puts some sort of, there's this new start, but there's still some sort of focus on these old wounds that don't want to quite heal, or maybe things that we haven't quite dealt with yet. So it's like we want to move forward, but there's something that's kind of holding us back. We want to move, and then we feel like we have things together, so we go to move forward, but Saturn is there, and Saturn wants to make sure we have everything together. So there could be like a little bit of anxiety there, right? So Chiron being the, I haven't talked about the story of Chiron in quite a while. Chiron is the wounded healer. And in its best form, Chiron uses its, we all kind of have like a deep wound of some kind, or like a deep affliction of some kind that like is hard to heal or hard to deal with, right? That's your Chiron wound, that like thorn in your side that's always there, the ball in the chain that's just difficult to get rid of. You more or less learn how to live with it, okay? So in its best, highest function, Chiron is able to use its pain and its suffering and what it's learned from what it's been through to either help somebody, aid somebody get through their issues, or to at the very least, be mindful and aware that we do not impress those difficult things that have been like impressed upon us. We don't do that same thing to other people. So like once you've suffered from it, you're a little bit more mindful of it. On a more negative side, worst case, is that we are using our wounds against others, whether that's out of fear, whether that's out of anger, whether that's out of frustration, but we're enacting what has been enacted upon us onto others somehow, or we are using our pain and our suffering as some sort of leverage or some sort of tool. So again, not necessarily saying one way or the other, because it can play out both ways, absolutely. But there is this big focus on the Chiron wound that we have around us. So there is huge possibility for new beginnings within our Chiron wound. So there is a huge possibility for healing. There's this possibility for moving forward, but there's hesitation there too, because this is something that can be so deep that it's just difficult to even face it, right? It's difficult to try to deal with it because we've been carrying it for so long. But if we have this new beginning, if we have this level of healing that can happen through the solar eclipse by focusing on the eye through the sign of Aries, focusing on the wound and focusing on ourselves for a while, then we can attempt to alleviate that wound, whether it's letting it go, whether it's not having it be quite so close. So like maybe the ball and chain was like on your wrist, now it's laying next to you, following you around type of thing. You can create this new space, this space for inspiration to arrive and to reshape and to bring some sort of clarity of like what the next step is and where can we go from here. So like I'm dealing with my wounds, I'm dealing with my issues, I'm dealing with my traumas, I'm dealing with my conditionings, I'm dealing with like my own toxic, shitty reactions, things like that. Whether that's been enacted like out of something I've done or the conditionings happen from somebody else or actions of others, that's kind of null and void. Not really, that's important to each one of our own stories, but you get the picture hopefully for like the general Chiron thing. So there's lots of room for healing within this, lots of healing within the like I realm, within the ego realm, within the I am realm, within your own physical and mental space. Mercury retrograde at the same time tells us that our mind is able to change, our mind is able to shift, just like Mercury Hermes is able to, very fluid, very undefined, okay? So our space for inspiration is not defined by anything other than what we define it as, right? That's empowering. That's a good feeling to have. There is this empowerment that comes from being fully inspired. And with Mercury retrograding, changing its mind, rethinking things, Venus coming into the conjunction with Neptune, where it has this very lofty, artistic, and in tune connective inspiration within its own right. And then the solar eclipse in the sign of Aries, in the sign of go, in the sign of initiation, with Chiron sitting there, giving us this opportunity to heal those deep wounds that are around us, or use them positively somehow, some way, creating this space for inspiration to reshape into something that maybe we have like really, really longed for a long time, or something that maybe we haven't even ever expected that we'd be able to. Mars and Saturn tells me that sitting together, ruling the eclipse, tells me that the new foundations and the new beginnings that we create within this solar eclipse new moon. Remember, it's still a new moon. We still have that seeding point and that initiation. That there is this ability to change things and to reshape things within our mind. And those things that we are going to reshape, with Saturn sitting there, Saturn tends to create very solid structures, things that last a long time. So the healing that we come through the inspiration and through the eclipse and all of these different energies that are coming together, if we take the time to find some sort of healing, if we take the time to work through things, whether that's on our own volition or, through some sort of connection to source, or through some sort of talk therapy or some other form of therapy, whatever works for you, we can start a new cycle, something new within the I Am, something new within Aries. Look at what house Aries is within your own chart too, and we can create a new foundation, a new framework that will last a long time. And that sets us up nicely for the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction that we have coming up here. So Jupiter-Uranus is only 2 degrees away from each other by the time the solar eclipse comes. So they're definitely within engagement range. April 20th is when those two come together, so we'll be talking more about that in the next couple weeks. But how nice is it that we have this very inspiring and very empowering solar eclipse in this North Node solar eclipse in the sign of Aries, just before Jupiter and Uranus come together. And Jupiter and Uranus come together just before Mercury starts to move forward. So it's like, we're getting ahead of ourselves, but I just love it. It's like we have this reworking and this changing of the inspiration. And if we allow this reshaping, if we allow the healing that allows us to kind of reshape and have this new beginning, and then we step into that abundance and that going against the grain, looking for something positive that Jupiter and Uranus can bring to us. And then just after that, Mercury stations to go direct a few days later and starts to move forward with all of this new inspiration that Mercury has picked up through these breakthroughs and the enlightenment and the downloads and the abundances that these two planets coming together, Jupiter and Uranus, have brought in. And then it moves on its merry way. How great is that? Yeah, I think there's lots of empowerment. I create space for inspiration to reshape. I create inspiration. You create the inspiration. You decide if there's going to be space for inspiration. You decide if there's going to be space for new beginnings. You decide if there is space for healing. When I say you create, I always say we are co-creators, so you can create the healing that is within the parameters that you and the universe have set up for this life, because I definitely think that we have our own freedom and our own free will within a certain context. There's some sort of certain container or space that we're in, but within that big space, it's bigger than you think, I believe, in my opinion. But within that space, or within that framework, within the life that you have set up, you have the ability to create inspiration. You have the ability to create the healings and the new beginnings. So that's the astrology for this week. I hope it has you as inspired as it has me. Card for this week, which is fitting. Actually pulled this 2 days in a row. So the Wheel of Fortune. There we are. You can see it there. The Wheel of Fortune is the card that came up for us today. Like I said, I chose this one. This one came up for me yesterday too in a reading, which was very interesting. So the Wheel of Fortune I kind of chuckle to myself because the Wheel of Fortune reminds us that things are always changing. Things are always reshaping. Things are always moving from one era to another or from one energy to the next. But how fast that wheel spins, sometimes we are at the top of the wheel, sometimes we are at the bottom of the wheel, sometimes we have lots of fortune, sometimes we feel like, and we have like lots of ability to work within things, sometimes we feel like maybe, the wheel is kind of rolling on us, but that wheel is always spinning and it's always turning. How fast the wheel spins, how quickly it moves, depends on the force behind the wheel, right? So that force behind the wheel is us. So that's where I say you have your own ability to create how fast that Wheel of Fortune moves. It's still a wheel, it's still circular, it's still going down its own path. But you can push it a little faster, make it go a little quicker. You can slow it down a little bit. So things are always kind of reshaping. And they are always changing. We are within, cycles within cycles. Even eclipses. We've talked about how eclipses run on cycles. You can look back to 6 months, you can look back 18 months, you can look back 9 years, you can look back 18 years. You can look back further than that too. You can look, if you've, depending on what you're looking at, you can look at eclipses back hundreds and thousands of years if it's applicable somehow. But the Wheel of Fortune is always moving, always turning, always alternating between things more favorable, less favorable, and I find that the nodes themselves, so the north node being something that we are kind of pulled towards and the south node being something that kind of like pulls us back towards it, you're kind of, the nodes of the moon, where the nodes are within your chart, there's this push and pull between the two. So like you're always feeling the need to kind of move towards the north node, but the south node is kind of pulling you back because it's familiar, but the north node looks good and looks enticing because it's something new and it's uncharted territory that looks appealing to us for one reason or another. And you have that back and forth within the Wheel of Fortune too. So I'm drawing a blank on the Rider-Waite deck, but like on my deck here you see so we have doves and we have snakes. So you have the two that are constantly chasing each other. And to me, a dove is a very peaceful bird. It's a bird of like peace and tranquility and love. Snakes are a little bit more like side-eye, a little bit more sketchy, and you have to kind of watch them. They slither around. It has a less positive connotation than the dove does in general. So you have this like rotating of the positive and the negative and this reshaping. So I create space for inspiration to reshape, knowing that the wheel keeps turning and that we can keep moving it there. So I liked that, and like I said, I personally pulled that card yesterday too, so twice in a row. Yeah. So that's what I have here. Comments here really quick. Robert, I feel very fortunate. I'm glad you do. And I don't know, that helps, right? When you acknowledge the fortune, you feel fortunate, then more comes to you. So what I want to bring into our meditation tonight is this image of the Wheel of Fortune. The wheel that keeps spinning and keeps moving us forward here. Because that's what we are. We're all on a path and we're all moving forward. So that's what I want to bring into the intention or into the meditation. I create space for inspiration to reshape. Hopefully you are now inspired to reshape some sort of mental involvement that you have within something, some sort of take take up the attunement and that emotional connection to something. And then as we move into this, as Venus moves into the sign of Aries, where the eclipse is going to be, then you've been so filled with this thing and so connected and so in tune with it that you have just like no choice but to go forward with it and to just do the thing and move forward and have the confidence to bust it out and to move forward. So get one last look at the intention there before I take it down. I create space for inspiration to reshape. I create space for inspiration to reshape. Have our intentional candle here, white as always. Haven't changed out the crystals. They're the same as they've been for the last couple weeks. I mentioned that I took these with me to a sound bath. They haven't just been on the table. These are just the crystals that I have been using and playing with the most lately. So they're going to stay out with us. So we have kyanite, fluorite, tiger's eye, and numenite here. So yep, that's what we have here. A variety of colors, lots of blue. I have blue on my bracelet too because Mercury, our communication, our throat chakra. So I think using our voice, but being mindful of our voice is important right now. So yeah, I would encourage you to explore a healthy balance of your own throat chakra as well. So take a couple deep breaths here. See, Melissa says in the comments that she has her lapis and moldavite with her. Lapis is also great for the throat chakra, so I love that as well. So we're going to light our intentional candle, and we're going to move on with our intention. As you see the candle light today, and you see the flame ignite, usually we feel our intention grow. But here, since our intention is inspiration, as you look at that candle and you see that flame grow and become more consistent, and as you focus on it, I want you to think of your inspiration growing. Whatever that means to you, whatever the first thing that comes to your mind, what are you inspired to do right now? Where is the pull for you? Where does the inspiration, where does that mental engagement feel like it's going? Doesn't matter how far you get or not with it. This is the direction that we're going here with this today. So focus on the candle, and as the flame grows and steadies, so does our level of inspiration to move forward. Deep breath in, deep breath out. Deep breath in and out. Do you have any last little fidgets? We are talking about Aries, we're talking about movement, we're talking about motion, so if you need to get any little wiggles out, go ahead and do so. If you haven't already, find yourself a nice comfortable position. I am sitting up on a meditation cushion. You can be sitting, you can be laying, you can be standing. You can be wherever is most comfortable and convenient for you. If you're ready to, go ahead and close your eyes. If you're not quite ready to do so yet, just try to soften your gaze. Try to focus a little less intently than you were a moment ago. And let's start by taking a nice deep breath in and releasing that breath. One more nice centering breath in and exhale out. Now that we've taken a moment to kind of center and ground our energy, I always want to invite you to take a moment to assess your breath that you arrived here with. Take a moment to check in with your breath and see how it's working for you at the moment. So how does your breath feel? Does it feel efficient or does it feel inefficient? Does it feel fulfilling and full, or does it feel like it's lacking in some way? How about your level of energy? Are you tired or fatigued? Do you feel energized and ready to move forward with whatever comes after this space? Is it a combination of both? Are you feeling any joy or sadness? Are you feeling any frustrations? Are you feeling contentment and connection? Or are you feeling disconnected and in need of something? Taking a moment to check in with your breath and just noticing where you are at. I invite you to always start a meditation practice by taking a moment to honor not only the energy and the breath that you showed up to the practice with, but also excitement and joy and success for just showing up here in general. Because that is the first and the hardest step, getting here. So take a moment to acknowledge the fact that you are showing up for yourself today. You are showing up for your physical body, your emotional body, your spiritual body. You're showing up for your conscious mind as well as your soul within you that knows so much more than our conscious mind can remember. Showing up to create a space of inspiration, an inspiration that is ever shifting and ever changing, ever growing. And that is because our path is ever shifting, ever changing, and ever growing. After you've taken a moment to create space for inspiration, after you've taken a moment to take stock of where you are, now we start to deepen our breath. The goal here, as you take your first inhale, is none other than to have the breath be slightly longer and slightly slower than the inhale before that. Same thing on the exhale. The only goal on the exhale is to have it be slightly slower and slightly longer than the exhale before it. So, at a pace and rate that feels right and inspiring to you, start this process of breathing in and breathing out slowly, deepening the breath, focusing on the changes within your body after each inhale and exhale. Noticing what happens to your breath as you move up and down the breath. Here, as you tune in to your own breath, at your own rate and your own pace, you are creating your own space. You are shaping a place to allow inspiration and perhaps even motivation. You are cultivating a space where you can step into where Chiron lives within your own life. You can step into a safe space of being kind and being easy on yourself. When we create this safe space for ourselves, it makes it easier to create and extend this space to others. As you continue the process of breathing in and out, you become more and more in tune with that harmonizing connection and balance within yourself. Venus and Neptune coming together in the sign of Pisces. Romantically married together, inspiring us to think, dream creatively, showing us that our dreams and our ambitions and that which inspires us has no boundaries, no limits. As you continue your own process of breathing in and out, you feel yourself being immersed deeper and deeper into that Neptunian connection of your breath and of your own energy in your own space. In less than a week's time, a great astronomical event that humans have marveled at since the beginning of time, as far as I can see. It's from the beginning of our inhabitants on Earth. Humans have marveled, have been in a place of awe, have been in a place of fear and hesitation, of that moment where the moon moves across the sun, darkening its light in varying capacities, depending on your location on Earth. So for a few moments, the moon moves past the sun, coming together to create a seeding point, but a seeding point that we are pulled towards, moving towards the North Node. And for a few moments' time, the light of the sun is blocked, but then the moon continues on its path, moving across the sun, out of its rays of light. And the light comes back, and the moon continues on its path. The day continues, life continues, and the day rolls on just like the wheel of fortune. That wheel of fortune is ever turning, ever shifting, ever shaping our path. The stone, the wheel, always remains the stone or the wheel. What changes is the momentum behind the wheel. The inspiration and the drive and the motivation. Our connection or our ability to disconnect from the wheel. And this week, as the moon loses its light, coming into a position for that new moon solar eclipse, it's decreasing in light, shedding its old ways, its old wounds, its old inspirations, its old ways of doing things. But then that wheel keeps spinning, and just as quickly as all the light leaves the moon, it instantly starts to grow again, leading us into a new cycle, a new chapter, perhaps even a new path. So as you move forward into this week, as Mercury is moving retrograde, revisiting its steps in the sign of Aries, rethinking, reworking our mind and our thoughts and our perceptions, reevaluating our communication, we know that this is a cycle that is just that, a cycle. One that will lead to another, and to another, and to another. So as the wheel keeps spinning, as the bell tolls, we ask, who does the bell toll for? It tolls for thee. As long as you are following that wheel of fortune, as you are moving through from one inspiration to the next, allowing for reshaping, you will be moving forward, moving onward. Because in a world that is ever-changing, within energies that are ever-shifting, what is consistent and what is consistent is that time marches on. Yes, it does. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, all of you. I find this week to be very uplifting in a way that there is so much more ahead than what there is behind in the grand scheme of things. Whether that's this day, this life, this journey of your soul, this little chapter, your whole soul's existence. Like, this is just a little part of it, right? And it feels like there's a lot of ability to handle our own things. Mars and Saturn coming together, very independent, in a bit of a dependent sign, but they're very independent and they're very precise in knowing what they want. Aries certainly knows what it wants. Chiron sitting there with the solar eclipse. I really encourage you to contemplate that ball and chain that holds on to you. I know you know what it is. We all have one. Just some of us hide it better than others. So, unless you have worked through all of that, if you have, please share the secrets of how to not have any sort of baggage of any kind, because there's always another layer to the onion of some kind, right? Just moving forward with it and allowing a space of reshaping. So, Venus is in that very empowered place in Pisces, coming into that contact with Neptune, but then she turns instantly and moves into a new sign, moves into Aries. The consecutive signs always have some very extreme differences. So there's no aspects between signs that are next to each other. They can't see each other. There's no line of sight there. So they're just very different, and they have very different mindsets. So Venus is going to reshape, but she's going to take what she's learned with her. Mercury is in the process of reshaping. In fact, as Mercury comes into a conjunction with the Sun that we will be talking about in the Cazimi shortly here, that's going to be a new cycle starting. So a new cycle for Mercury. So there's this reshaping here of Mercury. Jupiter and Uranus is going to reshape for a lot of people. For a lot of people, that's probably already starting to work on wherever Taurus is in your own life. So I'm sure you can probably see that somewhere. So thank you guys. Thank you to those saying thank you. I appreciate you guys. As always, I appreciate you. And you can look next Sunday for a new intention. So Sunday evenings, intentions are shared on Facebook page, Instagram page, YouTube community channel, and on the Facebook page. like to remind everybody that there are events on Facebook correlating with each week's event. So if you go to the Meditative Astrology Facebook page, go to the events tab, you will find an event that correlates with each week's meditation. I'm trying to get better about putting the intention in there too. I do it sporadically, but my goal is to have the intention posted early before it's shared on the main page into the event, just as some sort of incentive to respond to that event. Other than the fact that you will get reminders about our event, about our meditation, other than the fact that you just want to help the event share with other people and you want to help the algorithm by responding that you are going, whether you need a reminder, whether you want to share it with others, all of that helps. So find that event on Facebook and respond, going, maybe, whatever. And yeah, I will see you all back next Tuesday. I am coming, so I'm traveling over the weekend. I'm going to be gone all weekend. I'm coming back Tuesday, so there shouldn't be any reason why we're not here Tuesday. Just throwing that out there that I am traveling on Tuesday, but coming back early in the day. So there should be no hangups or no reasons, but just kind of throwing that out there. So, yeah, have a great day, have a great night, have a great week, have a great time viewing the solar eclipse if you're able to. Lots of the United States is able to see that in some sort of capacity. And, you know, just go forward with this idea of reshaping, and the inspiration will come within it. Go forward with this idea of the Wheel of Fortune that is always spinning. You know, just like your breath is always rotating, always coming in and out. Those cycles, that's the wheel always turning. So you have more of a connection to it than what you may possibly think. Thanks, Robert. Thanks, Nikita. I appreciate the well wishes for the trip. Should have some good picture, video, insights, something, story. I'm really looking forward to it. It's gonna be a great weekend. So that's all I have. Sorry it went a little bit over, but I appreciate you all for sticking around. So have a great one, and I will see you next week. Look for the intention on Sunday, so that way you have a little bit of time to sit with yourself. So you'll have the intention before the eclipse, so you can sit with next week's intention during the eclipse if you want to. I would say a culmination of our last several intentions are definitely fair game. So last week, what has been out of sight will come to light. I create space for inspiration to reshape. I feel like both of those intentions, along with what we have next week, will fall right in line with the eclipse. So have a good one, and I'm gonna go before I just keep on rambling, because that's what I'm doing. So have a good night, and reach out at any time. Message me on social media, message me on the website, and yeah, I'm here. So see you next week.